Thanks for coming this morning, putting up with the rain. Better than ice and snow, I will say that. That got me a little by surprise when I first got here. Last night's event was a great event for those of you who were there and for those of you who weren't. One of the challenges that I saw coming into this was, we were going to have a bunch of kids there, which is kind of unusual from what most Boys and Girls Clubs around the country do with their fundraisers. Usually they're just adults or they're kid events. There's not a lot of events where they try to do both. So I was a little nervous about how do you have a speaker that can entertain the kids and keep their attention and keep them from wanting to go out and shoot hoops, and also the adults. And I was very, very impressed with our kids especially. They were glued. I didn't see one of them get up and want to leave. And the thing that got me, the message that got to me is really why I do this job. When I was in California working as a police officer, same thing. I realized that if you just give them a little bit of an incentive, and if you could have seen when we were at the club yesterday, and one of our kids took a Flamin Hot Cheetos package, the little the bag that it comes in, and made a bow tie out of it, and framed it, and gave it to Richard. And when she saw the expression on his face, that meant so much to that little girl because it validated her talent, her creativity. And then last night at the event, we had our Youth of the Year, Okoye, as an artist, and he's done some incredible work. But it's his, it's personal. I don't know if he's ever done a lot of shows, and we were debating what could we give as a gift. So we decided to give one of Okoye's pieces, and I went and I got it framed, and we had it framed nicely. And when he saw it, it's like, wow, you really did that? You framed that? And I said, yeah, it has value, and you're an incredible kid. It's a great talent, and people need to see it. You need to learn how to present it, and I'll help you with it. So just showing them, just giving that little bit of an incentive, it's amazing what they can do. So if you take that and you multiply it times 3,500 kids, that's how many we're impacting in Memphis every day with what you see, citizenship and academic success and healthy lifestyles, all of those things that we do. But really what it is just those relationships, those little moments every day that happen at the club where we have that opportunity to spark those kids' creativity, imagination, and then they see anything's possible when they meet somebody like Richard. So thanks very much for coming and doing this for us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Very nice. All right, so I'm going to use the wireless that way you guys can use this. We'll start with Jenny. Basically what we're going to do, so for those that don't know me, my name is Jeremy Park. I'm a VP of Communications here for Lipscomb Pitts Insurance. My real fun job, though, is running the Lipscomb Pitts Breakfast Club. So we are a privately funded catalyst. We actually have partners here in the room that all come together to underwrite the cost of almost 200 events a year, which is pretty crazy, but it's all free for the community. And so our big belief is being able to get all these companies on the same page, so breaking down these big things that need millions of dollars and thousands of volunteers to activate, breaking it down into bite-sized pieces so that everybody can play a piece of it, bringing together government, education, nonprofit, business, the faith community, so all the various sides of our community coming together, literally sitting at the same table to collaborate. All of our events are totally free, which is a big game changer. That way we can look at high school students, college students, retirees, everybody in between, and say, we can get you involved in the city, it's not going to cost you a dime. Positive news is a big piece of that. That's where we have our TV show, radio show, call me commercial appeal, book. Everything is focused on celebrating the positives, but also, too, leading you to be more engaged here in our community. And then the last piece is turnkey volunteerism, and we'll talk about why that's important, but breaking down these big things into pieces where all you have to do is show up. So things like Samaritan's Feet, where we literally, the kids are busted at different times, you just get to show up, the shoes are already purchased for you, and you get to wash the kids' feet, give them new socks and shoes. The kids walk away saying it's the best day of their lives. But you as a volunteer, all you have to do is show up. Everything is done for you. And we'll talk about why that's important as a trend in volunteerism and in corporate philanthropy. But the reality is making all of this easy for you. And so that's kind of our world, and that's part of the fun is, I get to work with these individuals, these ladies, and even, Richard, getting to know him and working with him on some of these projects on a regular basis. And so to me, this is the rewarding part, but it's the fun part. So let's start with Jenny, and what we're going to do is I'll introduce them title-wise, but then we're going to give them a chance to kind of tell a little bit about their role and responsibility in the company, and that way we can start out with some perspective on just what they do within the organization, and then we'll dive into the trends. So, Jenny Koltnow, Director of Communications and Community Relations for AutoZone. Tell us a little bit about your world, Jenny.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good morning. Happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I guess being a Jenny was part of the requirements. It's kind of fun having my counterpart at FedEx being a Jenny too, though. Jenny with a Y. So in my role as Director of Communications and Community Relations, I really kind of split my responsibilities. Communications is primarily corporate internal communications, and overseeing those communications that go out first to our store support center, which is our headquarter building on Front Street, as well as enterprise communications, really supporting all of our teams throughout the enterprise. And then the community relations is pretty straightforward, supporting our corporate philanthropy and AutoZoner engagement, which is primarily focused in Memphis, but we're looking and creating new opportunities to activate AutoZoner involvement throughout the organization. AutoZone is a nearly 36-year-old company. We established our first store in Forest City, Arkansas in 1979, and have since grown to have a presence in 49 states and 3 countries, and also have additional businesses with Auto Anything, All Data, and most recently IMC, which are just other companies that have worked in the aftermarket, automotive aftermarket space, that have really helped us to sort of expand our reach and to create more opportunities to support our customers and say yes to our customers every single time they encounter AutoZone. On the community relations side, we really look at ways in which we can leverage our resources. It's our philanthropy, it's our participation, it's volunteerism, and also the expertise that our AutoZoners have in order to really augment those partnerships we create with the organizations we fund. So, I mean, I'll get into more detail, but that's sort of a general overview. So thank you again. And also, Richard, it's very much an honor to be on a panel with you today.
So next up is Richard Montanez. He heads multicultural sales and community activation for Pepsi North America. Tell us about your role, Richard.
Well, you know, on that title it says community activations. That's really not my official title. Community is so important to me that I put it on there, and I love because somebody said, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "Because I can." You know, and I'm thankful that I've gotten to a position where I can do that. But I really have 2 strategies when it comes to community. I have a PepsiCo strategy that I get paid to facilitate. But I also have my own community strategy that it lines up with PepsiCo's, but it's so important to me, and I've been with PepsiCo for 38 years, and I've had every role you can think of. I've been on the Frito side, I've been in the operations, marketing side, sales side, government affairs, and I even did a stint in HR for 2 years. And I tell everybody, I was the worst HR manager in the history of PepsiCo. But I gained an awful lot of respect for people who work in HR. But so I spend most of my time in the big cities across the country. Memphis used to be one of my markets in 2000 up in 2003. And I feel bad because I would just come in, meet with my team, go to, check out the stores and whoever it is, and get on a plane and get out. It wasn't until I met Jeremy that I really got to see the community here. And the truth is, I was, because I get to speak all over the country and see and meet people, you really have something special here and unique. The way you come together to serve the community, which is, and I tell Jeremy, man, if I could just bottle up what you guys do and take it to other cities across the country, it would, I'd be a billionaire. And then I look at, for me, community and diversity, go together, and I think you can relate to this, but when I look at the great leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez, they did combine together. They did one thing. And they help change the laws of America. But I think that in today's society, you and I, we have the opportunity to change the heart of America. Laws never change anyone's heart, but people like you, this is what the country needs. And I take it to the extreme because, again, the way I grew up, I believe in community, I believe in diversity. It's what made our country strong. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Very nice. Next up, Jenny Robertson. And she is the official title, Director of Citizenship and Reputation Management at FedEx. So Jenny Robertson.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Jenny and Richard. It's an honor to be here as well. And also with the Boys and Girls Clubs, I know we've been a supporter of the Boys and Girls Club for a little bit, so we're proud to be here with you all today as well. My organization at FedEx is part of our corporate communications group, but we have a team. We're very fortunate to be able to have a dedicated team to citizenship, and we have about 30 people in our group, and I like to position ourselves or talk about ourselves as being the soul of the company, because we have our operations and our network and our trucks, and those are kind of the arms and the legs, and then we have our people who are the heart of our organization. But I feel like what we do in our department is help give that soul and that reason and that purpose for our employees for why they go to work every day, and we help try to elevate what they do to show that it's not just moving a package from A to B. It's helping a community thrive. It's helping deliver and give other communities access to things they may not have had access to. So we really try to live that purpose for the rest of the company by looking for ways to help our employees feel more connected to a higher purpose for the organization. Within the group, in terms of different responsibilities, we'll get into some of the specifics, I think, later in this panel, but we have employee volunteerism. We have 300,000 employees around the world in 220 countries and territories, so we do a lot to engage our employees in those communities. We also have our corporate giving, so the nonprofits that we support, and then we do in kind, so we use our networks and our shipping to help deliver supplies where they're needed most. The reputation management part of our group, really, a lot of people wonder, like, how does that fit with citizenship? But it really does, because it's about thought leadership, and it's about getting our executives out, speaking, talking, representing the company, and really bringing to life everything that we're doing from a citizenship point of view and showing what that means in the world. So that's a little bit of our group, and we'll talk more later.
So we'll go ahead and pass, or actually you can hold on the microphone. So I was going to go one at a time through the different trends, but I think what we'll do is we'll talk about them overall, and then what I'll let each of you do is kind of comment on the ones that you think are the most prevalent to your organization, and then you can elaborate. So when you look at the trends, the major ones, the ones that are making the headlines, USA Today, Forbes, all these types of headlines. The first one is, years ago when you talk about corporate philanthropy, it used to be enough to cut a check. So it's financial giving. The expectation wasn't necessarily to be hands-on in the community. Now the expectation, though, is very much about physical engagement. So because of social media, we want to physically see you and your employees out, giving back, tutoring, mentoring, scrubbing graffiti off the walls, planting trees and flowers. We expect that. What goes with that is consumers are now making their purchasing decisions based on your social impact. So Forbes magazine, companies without social impact culture will soon be obsolete. USA Today, consumers now looking at corporate America to be part of the solution. And so that's a big driver is Tom Shadyac, the best-selling Hollywood producer of Bruce Almighty, Liar, Liar, Ace Ventura. His whole thing is that Starbucks will become our Bucks, Walmart become our Mart, because if you're not giving back and making a difference, another company will, and by the natural pull of the heart, consumers are going to start shopping with them. And so that's a big shift, is we're looking for physical engagement now. It's not enough to just cut the check. So that's one big trend. The second one is volunteerism. And so years ago, you had more time. It wasn't the time poverty issue that we all face today, and that goes with social media and everything else and the economy. But the reality is nonprofits could rely on a few volunteers that could give hours to be able to do fundraising events. So steak and burger dinner last night, probably organized by a few volunteers being able to dig in. Well, now the same nonprofit has to rely on an army of volunteers, each doing very little. Because if you expect a whole lot from anybody, you're going to lose them. And so that's where it's really important for businesses, once again, to do things like modified work schedules, to bring the nonprofits into the office, to make it a part of, because we have an army of employees that we can then leverage to get involved with nonprofits. So that's the second piece of this. The first one, physical engagement. Consumers driving decisions. Second one is volunteerism. The third one is, and you heard kind of both Jennies elaborate on this, or allude to this, is mission alignment. So back to the idea that CEOs, business decision makers are very results driven. They want to see results. Well, if you are giving $500 here, $500 there, it's really hard, especially when you talk about a social context, to make a difference. And so business leaders are realizing, wait a second, if I want to see results, if I want our community to thrive, I need to focus on those organizations that are aligned with my mission as a corporate entity, but also, too, my skill sets. So what is my team good at? So that I can then volunteer and leverage that for a much more magnified difference. So those are the three basic trends that are out there. And then I'll let you kind of elaborate on the ones that you think fit the most with your organization. So Jenny, since you have the microphone, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I will say when you look at kind of the history of corporate philanthropy, a lot of times it started where people were giving donations after a crisis or after something bad happened, and it was, okay, let's just make a donation and hope it goes away or hope it helps our reputation. And then it kind of evolved into let's do it for PR purposes, or let's do it for promotional and get awareness and cut a check and do a big press conference. And so it was very self-serving. So now, like Jeremy was saying, it's evolved into what we talk about as shared value, which is finding those ways that what your company does benefits the community just by aligning what our strengths are and what we do best with how it can best impact the community. So it's a win-win. It's a what can we do that helps the community, but then in turn also helps us. And some of the things that we're doing around shared value is we look at things, and it's not always giving to a 501c3. It could be the way that you do your products. So we have things like carbon neutral shipping, where if you send a FedEx envelope, we will provide carbon offsets. We do things such as with our vehicles, ensuring that the emissions are lowered on them. So looking for ways that what we're doing as an operations can help the community, but then also supplementing that and complementing that with what we do from a community relations point of view. And so we're looking at things, we aligned our giving around those areas that are our biggest strengths. So we looked at, okay, we get things places fast. Who needs that the most? Communities in a disaster. And if we help those communities recover in a disaster, then that benefits us because we can get our trucks back on the road and get our deliveries back on the road faster as well. So it's that win-win of how do we help the community, but it also benefits the company, which sounds self-serving, but it's the reality of the way things are moving toward.
Nice. Richard?
About 10 years ago, if you remember back, there was a lot of scandals concerning corporate philanthropy. A lot of the CEOs were doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And it had and those of you who are in community who understand this, it had a negative impact on giving. Giving dropped considerably. And one of the things that I like to do is I analyze every situation and it's not always about numbers, and you just look at certain things, but I saw that everybody was backing away from giving to community, and at the time, an organization like mine, we had a national strategy. The national strategy that we were going to work with national organizations because they were the brands, but we also saw that some of those brands weren't doing things right. And the other thing that we also thought about was how do we get the local regions involved? And I think that's when you start getting your employees to volunteer. If it's their idea and it's more regional than it is, I can send out a memo and tell everybody, hey, we're going to work this one. A few people show up. But what we did is we started asking each general manager of each market, you tell us what's important in your community because you know your community better than we do. And I saw that began to change the involvement. The numbers just went up incredibly. So what we took it a step further, and we actually put community part of executive compensation. I won't tell you exactly what the numbers are, but a big part of my compensation structure is based around people, and it's business and people. On the people side, you'll have diversity, you'll have community, and your own people, are they being promoted? So when we did that, you can talk about it all day long, but to get people involved, sometimes it takes, putting it in their pocketbooks. So even with that, I put a strategy together, and I think I shared it with you a couple of years ago. And I took corporate social philanthropy. And you take social philanthropy, and if you have a good working social philanthropy, it'll lead to a great community development. And when you have great community development, you know, what are the metrics for that? Is you have what I call retail activation or economic growth. So in my organization, we said, look, let's not just give social philanthropy. Let's give to those who have good programs, who are doing something to develop the community, because again, that's the return on my investment. Now, I couldn't get away with that 20 years ago, because 20 years ago, the structure was different. The committee would come back and say, how dare you? You're all about money. And today I said, yeah, I'm all about money. Because I'm not making money, guess what? I don't have any money to give you. You know, we have to run our businesses the way we run our homes. And I come from a generation where, you know, do I pay the gas bill today and the light bill tomorrow? Well, you know, people need to understand, especially in a nonprofit world, that it's not selfish when organizations come at you and say, we need a return on our investment, because that's how we're able to give back to you. But again, if you look at it 20 years ago, you know, they would hang you if you had that attitude. But times have changed. And then, you know, what I like to spend a lot of time with is, I work with a lot of the national organizations across the country. But I also work with a lot of regions, and, you know, and I try to teach them the same thing. Look, you know, we want to help you grow financially, you know, but we need to become partners. You know, you need to help me sell Pepsis and Hot Cheetos, because then I can take a portion. And I think, you know, it's safe now, you know, that we can all say that. If we're partners, let's be partners. If we're not, we're not. You know, and that's a strategy that you know, we've been using for about 10 years, and it's worked fantastic. So
Tell them, I think we had a chance to interview him for a WKNO show. It'll air soon. We'll announce when that is as soon as we get the airtime. But you made a comment about, it was a plant manager that kind of taught you this, but tell them the quote that in terms of the review process, like, you don't care what I'm paying you for performance during the, you tell them.
that's a great, you know, again, I come from the old school generation, you know, and, you know, you couldn't say the things to your employees today that your boss told you 30 years ago. You know, you'd be sued, right? But some of those things that they told you, you know, we were built strong. We could take it all, you know. And I remember, you know, we have something that's called a PDR, Personal Development Review. We have one at the very beginning of the year, then we had a mid-year, and at the end of the year we have it, and that's when your compensation is determined by the success that you had. So you go over your objectives, you hit it. And I remember one time I told, you know, my old boss, I said, you know, I had a great year. And he looked at me and he says, well, I pay you to have a great year. Show me something that you did that I didn't pay you to do. And you know what, it took me to a new level personally. Is that, wow, that's so true. You know, having a great year is really average, because that's what your company pays you to do. But when you start putting things down on paper that you weren't paid, it separates you. You know, that happened to me 25 years ago, and I tell my people that today. I had a great year. I said, well, I pay you to have a great year. Show me something that you did differently. Show me how you impacted your community, whether it was serving, you know, and that separates it. And, you know, and again, you know, learning the old school way. And then I remember, you know, it's a little bit off, but I remember I had another old school manager, you know, and one day I walked into this is many, many years ago, I walked into his office and I said, I'm not happy here. And he looked at me and said, well, you know what, Richard, if my job was to make you happy, instead of giving you a paycheck at the end of the week, I'd give you Disneyland tickets. This company's not here to make you happy. You're here to make this company. And again, this was 20 years ago. We can't tell people that today. If they say I'm not happy, we got to sit down, call HR, call a counselor, and what can I do to make you happy? You know, but I think when you are working with community, you're a part of that community. Happiness just automatically comes out. And we found out too that, and I know that both you ladies know this, is that when you allow your employees to serve the community, I mean, you know, in today's generation, that's what they want. They want a company that they can stand with and be proud of, versus it's not all about the paycheck. You know, and we've had a great, you know, we did another strategy where we wanted to be the brand of choice, we wanted to be the employer of choice, and the community partner of choice. The brand of choice is easy to explain. We wanted to be number one. The employer of choice is we wanted people to come and work for us. The community partner of choice, we wanted the communities across the country to say, who's your partner? It's PepsiCo. That's pretty aggressive because, we weren't there. But, just because you're not there doesn't mean it's not something you should try to achieve, so.
Very nice. Jenny?
Richard, when you were talking about, kind of what did you do that I didn't pay you for, it kind of made me think, it's kind of an appropriate segue. At AutoZone, we have a very strong culture. In 1986, an AutoZoner actually drafted our AutoZone pledge. And that pledge still stands today. It's not a mission statement, it is a pledge. It is a 4-line statement that every AutoZoner, all 77,000 and counting, know by heart. And it really is, and I'm happy to repeat it, I could do the cheer with Hannah. Mike probably knows it too. Jeremy's heard it plenty of times. But I mention that because that culture is really the foundation for what we do in our stores and in our communities, and how we can build support around the programs that we run and the plans that we have. Our pledge goes, AutoZoners always put customers first. We know our parts and products. Our stores look great. We've got the best merchandise at the right price. Now, in the context of an auto parts retailer, it's easy to kind of make sense and make all of that tangible. But we use that also as sort of the parameters for our grant making and for our community partnerships. And even as recently as like a week ago, Hannah Zachary, our community relations manager, and I were talking with arts organizations. We have a long history and legacy supporting the arts and cultural institutions in the greater Memphis area. But we kind of translate those cultural anchors for our partners, because at the end of the day, we need to know that what we do in the community resonates with our AutoZoners, whether it's in Memphis or whether it's in Wasilla, Alaska. I mean, this is a really important part of what we do. And so it's really about integration with our business, with our culture, and with the sort of evolving nature and demographics and interests of our AutoZoners. The other thing that I think is a priority is, and I would say a trend, but I think it's sort of more urgent than that, is collaboration. We don't want sort of standalone, like we help you and you're an island, we're all siloed. We really want to see sort of collaboration around issues, around initiatives, whether they're on a local or a national or even international level. And I think that's where we really harness the resources we have. We can leverage what we have and bring many more ideas and expertise to the table. And so we even, and again, unlike FedEx and PepsiCo, who have vast international philanthropic and CSR programs, ours is sort of evolving into sort of a broader reach, but historically we've been concentrated here. But we say frequently to organizations, look, you've got to work with others. You've got to, seek out others. We make those, we facilitate those collaborations. And we oftentimes say, too, that we will support any efforts to consolidate. And no one's taken us up on that yet. But I think it's an important part because there are really limited resources out there, whether you're looking on a local or international scale. And duplication can really be a problem and interferes with really the end goal. So if we can facilitate, and I say that collaboration also goes across the sort of business sector. And we don't have all the answers, we don't have all the reach, but we look for those opportunities where we can kind of leverage those relationships and ultimately have a positive result.
So we've got 2 more questions and we'll start interacting with the audience. The first one is, tell us a new program or something that's evolved over the last couple of years that's a new initiative. So new program, new initiative, something new that's going on in your world. Whoever wants to, you can give me that.
Well, I'm really excited, and I'm not trying to, single out anyone that just happens to be in the room, but recently AutoZone launched a partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Memphis. It was announced about 2.5 weeks ago, that is. But they have the Technical Training Center located on Walker Avenue. It's just a block over from Lemoyne College. And actually, it was an AutoZoner in our merchandising department who had met Megan Klein, I think, at one point, but had been introduced to the automotive program that has been in operation there for several years. And, we could have just sort of thrown our name up on the automotive program and walked away. But I think what's really exciting is that over the last 6 months, we've really been looking at, how can we expand upon that and leverage AutoZone's resources and expertise, one of those being customer service. So I credit Bill Edwards, who's a 29-year-plus AutoZoner who started his career behind the counter at a store in Phoenix, who's since risen the ranks and now is one of our vice presidents, to really kind of planting that seed. But now we've been working closely on really having a more robust soft skills training program, really putting a focus on customer service and ultimately helping any student who goes through the Technical Training Center program, whether it's warehousing or logistics or culinary or gardening or automotive, that they not only can get a job, but they can keep a job. I mean, all of us know, regardless of industry or age of the employee, we all need people who can interact and who can solve problems and deliver customer service and customer satisfaction. And so we really look forward to building that partnership and really getting our AutoZoners involved so that they can use their own experience and their own expertise to ultimately help the thousands of students who go through their program.
That's a great point in the sense that it's not just about cutting the check and putting the name on the board. It's about how do we actually physically get involved on a regular basis and be engaged. Richard or Jenny?
We've got a program that we have been supporting for a long time just by providing in-kind shipping for them. It's called First Robotics. And it's organizations in schools around the country, and these kids build these robots and they compete against each other in different challenges. And Dean Kamen, who's a well-known inventor and innovator, started it and is good friends with our chairman, Fred Smith. And so it began as kind of just a relationship-based, let's just move these robots, and we just did it for them. And a couple of years ago, we said, okay, how can we really engage with this and make it something that involves our employees and that also helps provide these kids who are involved with this with better views of FedEx, and maybe when they become engineers, they'll think of FedEx as a place for employment. So this will be our second year to do it, and next week we'll be at the National Championships in St. Louis. And what we did, it's also a ploy or a play, I guess, to get to the millennials as well, or to get to this next generation, but we're engaging them all at this national championship in what we call the Innovation Challenge. And so while they have this downtime between their competitions, we've given them almost like a scavenger hunt of clues, and it's all in social media, and there are these challenges that they have to solve, and then they go and post in Twitter or Instagram the way that they've solved the riddle we gave them, and they have to actually learn about FedEx by doing it. It'll be questions like, if a plane leaves from Memphis and goes to Beijing and needs this much fuel per hour, stuff I can't figure out myself, but these kids somehow do it, and they have to come up with creative ways to post their answers. So it engages them in our business, they learn about our business. They get to come up with creative ways to share that information. They're tagging FedEx in all these social channels, so it positions us as an innovator. And then we have our employees there. Our IT executives are really getting involved and loving showing up at these events and working with these kids and getting to pass out the awards to the kids. We selected one team that we're going to bring. It's this all team, it's called the Ponytail Posse. It's an all-girl team who are flying into St. Louis for the championships and going to just treat them like royalty while they're there. And they won that in an online challenge. So that's just an example of a way that we've engaged our employees, our executives. We took something we've been doing for years and looked at it with a fresh lens to reach a new audience. And we're hoping that those are kids that will, because these are brilliant kids, so we want them to think of FedEx when they think of their engineering careers.
We're in every country that the government will allow us to be, so our foundation is worldwide. But as I said earlier, we have a couple of different strategies because when you work with foundation dollars, there are some strict guidelines that you have to follow, and they're good guidelines. But a couple of years ago, we started a program called the PepsiCo Corps, kind of like the Army Corps. And what we do is we take about a dozen of our employees, and you have to apply for it. And it's every division, every function, whether you're in sales and operations, whether you work for Gatorade or our cookies or our cereal company, doesn't matter. You apply for it, and then what we do is we give you an assignment. An assignment is an international assignment, so we give them 2 months off to go solve a problem in China or India and things like that. And we found that to be very, very successful because, our international foundation concentrates a lot on, not only on this, but a big part of it is women's rights and water conservation, getting good drinking water to some of these third world countries. So we send a team out there, we pay all expenses, we give them a budget, we give them 2 months to solve the problem, and it's something that's really becoming huge, not only internally but externally. The countries that, and the one thing that PepsiCo does is we don't do a very good job of telling our story of what we do. I do that one-on-one, but we just don't. Some other companies, I like to say this as we spend $5 in a community and spend $1 marketing what we did. Other people will spend $1 in the community, $5 telling the world what they did. We don't do that, but that's a huge program that's working fantastic for us. But it's also helping the countries that we're investing in. But the thing that we do here in North America, that again, when I said there's 2 strategies, and my strategy, I've been working this strategy for many years, and you can imagine PepsiCo is a huge ship, and it takes a long time to get it to churn. But a couple of years ago, which I consider a personal good win, it's kind of that thing that I can put on my resume. I don't get paid to do this, but look what I did, is that we got all the regions across the PepsiCo divisions in North America to put in their operating budgets a portion for community. And a few years ago, community, everyone depended on our foundation. So the request went to foundation. The general manager of this year said, hey, the foundation would turn it down. It doesn't fit with our guidelines. And finally we said, look, those are foundation dollars. It's a little bit different. To really be a part of the community as the general manager, the local executives, the local sales and marketers team need to know that community. And if it's so important to you, then take a portion and put it into your operating plans. And you know what? Across the country, every division has community as part of their operating plan. So for me, it was a personal huge win, but also sending a strong message into corporate America. If it's that important, quit depending on just the foundation. Because the foundation, it's hard, and there's a lot of guidelines, especially I'm a marketer and a salesman. I get $1 million from the foundation, and they say, well, you can't put that up there, you can't do that. Oh man, I'd rather, guys, let's just take it out of my marketing budget,
So one of the things, that I think you're hearing is it's a great engagement tool, but it's a lot of work. When you talk about taking it to that level in terms of creating, a FedEx trivia contest and engaging, that's one of the things that we're seeing is you have to have a team that can manage it. This is not something that you do on the fly when you talk about really making a difference. It has to come from the leadership, and it has to be a priority, and leading by example. But all the way through, you've got to be engaged as a company. It's not one of those that you can just do it, at 5 o'clock or 4:45 in 15 minutes. Oh my gosh, we've got to do something, and let's put this together. So it becomes a part of your operations. It becomes a part of your strategy. It becomes day to day. This is our responsibility, and obviously, the results and the impact. But tell us, one bit of advice, because obviously, all 3 of you are very large organizations. The impact that you are able to have teams that are dedicated to this. Many in the room, obviously, you're talking smaller companies that have a local impact only. But give us one bit of advice that you would recommend based on, obviously, everything you've experienced that would be good for this audience.
I said earlier that community and diversity go together. I personally believe that. You can debate that, and that's okay, but that's my personal opinion. And I feel that as much time as I spend teaching one organization internally, that's where it starts for me. The message wasn't going out and telling everyone how important community was to us. My time was spent telling my fellow executives how important. I needed to educate them and teach them. And again, as I said, in diversity, you look at, this country, we have something that's called tolerance. And in my organization, I'm taking it a step further. I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be celebrated. I want to be accepted. There's a big difference. Well, you know what? I tolerate Richard Montanez, but I don't accept him. And that's all where our country's at today. And the same thing with community. I don't want anyone in my organization, I have to tolerate community. No, you accept it. Because when the community is growing, guess what? Our business numbers, the last few years, the strategy, people could debate me and argue it, but our business has been the best ever. It's just amazing. But we're spending an awful lot of time, events like this. And I teach my people, how are we going to go sell to them? We don't even know them. Let's get to know them. Let's really become partners. And let's accept each other versus tolerate. And I know that that's what the country talks about. Tolerance and this. When are we going to accept each other? When are we going to accept community as what it really is? Because sometimes the old-time executives look at community as a donation. And you heard me say it last night. When it's come to community, there's no such thing as donating. Don't use that word. We don't donate to community, we invest. Because I know that when community is doing great, guess what? You have money in your pocket and you're gonna remember who came in and helped you. It's a no-brainer, so those are the things that we concentrate on.
I think I would say, in terms of advice, it would be focus and find out what it is that your company or your organization stands for and what that purpose is, and then focus on that and do a few things really, really well. And I know at FedEx we have found ourselves stretched so thin with those $500 checks and those $1,000 checks everywhere, and it takes as much time to manage one of those as it does a truly meaningful grant. So finding what that is most meaningful to your employees, to your business, and really going all in on that. And then and you can't ignore, there's always those things you'll have to do, but put your attention and your focus on that, which is the most impactful for your community and your organization.
Yeah, Jenny, I'd echo, and Richard too, I'd echo what you said. What I'd add is just patience. None of our programs have evolved overnight, and I might have the world's most brilliant idea, but I'm not going to get it done unless I build alignment within the organization, that I can really tie it to our business goals, and that it's consistent with the interests of our audience, and which can be defined in different ways for different circumstances, but it's really, what I've learned, I've been at AutoZone for going on, I guess, about 20 months. You talk about sort of like, turning an aircraft carrier, and that's business, it's an organization. So I think it's a really important practice in creating opportunities where you can focus. If you're gonna, transition from the $500, checks to, really big long-term investments, once those relationships are created, you got to stick with it too. I was in a group with other grant makers last week, and we were talking with some folks in local and regional government. And one of the things we said was, when you're planning and you're building these things, don't look at, immediate results either. And it's, it's a communications issue, it's a implementation, it's a, whoops, that wasn't quite right, let's tweak, consideration. But it's also like, give it some time, some runway in order to see, what results might yield, and then also how you can really sustain that effort. but have the endurance to kind of stick with it. And that's why, sort of the process on the front end is so critical. Getting the details right, getting the support internally and externally, but ultimately giving it some time to bear fruit so that you can really have the impact you want.
I think, on my end, one of the things that I've seen is that it's a matter of the mindset. If you go in thinking that, okay, we don't have to change a lot of what we do, it's micro change. It's adding little bits here and there and thinking about the things you're already doing and adding purpose. So in other words, some of the things that we've done here, modified work schedule, for instance, and obviously that's what the leadership has to support. You can't say, yes, this is important, but yes, we need you at your office the whole time, and so you can't ever leave. But if the leadership supports it, doing things like a modified work schedule, where you can go in and you can work with the kids at Porter Leaf from 8:30 to 9:30, and then you can be in the office by 10. Or you can go and you can leave at 3:30 and drive and go to the Boys and Girls Club Center, and you can work with the kids there and do homework and work on the computer or play basketball with them, and then be home by 5. So you can be very flexible with your scheduling, and you can still get the work done. You can make it up if you need to. We don't necessarily do that here. We just say it's important to us. Go do it. Obviously, you have to have it approved with organizations that you support as a company. But modified work schedules, bringing nonprofits into your office. So doing food drives, toy drives, having nonprofit executive directors come in and say, look, this is who we are, this is what we do. So you get the employees engaged. Then you roll it out to the employees and you say, look, if you're willing to be on a board or you're willing to be on a committee or you're stepping up as a volunteer, we're going to support you. So it may be matching, it may be financial sponsorships, things like that, but basically putting your money behind your employees and letting them lead the charge. And we've been really impressed with just rolling it out on our end, saying, hey, here's corporate games, or here's this, or here's that. Who wants to take this on and take ownership? And our employees right off the bat, and this is a perfect example, little libraries. We just sent out an email internally and said, hey, we've got this from the commercial appeal, we're doing a little library, who can paint this? And we had a lady that said, hey, I've got it. She organized the team, and they did something that we would have never been able to do ourselves. But it's just that empowerment of saying, hey, these are the things that are important to us. We're going to let our employees engage. And they come back and they're glowing, saying, we had so much fun, thank you so much. And really all we did, we bought them some food and drinks, and we bought them paint. And the rest they took care of. And so, the end result is a win-win-win for everyone. But yet we as an organization really just allowed them the freedom and the flexibility with a little bit of support, saying, hey, this is important. It aligns with who we are, what we want to do. We're going to give you the keys to drive the car. So I think that's where we found that just being intentional, looking at the things you're already doing, but adding one more layer, adding purpose, really makes a big difference. And actually, to your point, Richard, about operational, I'm really surprised now, and I think it's an amazing thing, when you look at the one-for-one model like Tom Shoes and Warby Parker and all these organizations, the difference, and that's a big trend in and of itself, is it's sustainable. So in other words, instead of waiting until the end of the year to see how much money is left over to cut a financial contribution, these companies are making it a part of their operational costs. So with every single transaction, every single sale, part of that money goes back to benefit an organization. And I think that's something you can take away, regardless of your industry, is every single transaction, how can we, for every single thing that we sell, even in the insurance business, how can we set aside a percentage so that we know automatically that it's going to benefit an organization? And I think it makes a bold statement to your employees where it's like, okay, wait a second, with every single move we make, it's going to benefit the community. I'm not working for a company that's basically going to wait to the end of the year and say, okay, is there money left over? Hey, you've had a great year, thank you so much for the company, but we're not going to invest in it. We don't just have the money. But now you actually do with every single transaction. So I think there's a lot of things like that that are great opportunities, regardless of your company's size, to be able to make a difference. Let's go ahead and...
I just wanted to mention one other thing, insight that I gleaned last week. St. Jude hosted a corporate partner summit for a couple days last week here in Memphis. And there were representatives from probably, 60, 65 different companies who interface or support St. Jude in some way or another. And probably on some level, we all support St. Jude. Everybody in here does. But what was, really exciting was to sort of talk about sort of the integration or the evolution of our partnership there. And I realize St. Jude is St. Jude, so yes. But, we have been a Thanksgiving partner for 10 years. We do sort of point of sale donation during the holiday season at all of our stores across the country. We've just signed another long-term commitment to be the sponsors of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, which benefits St. Jude, and have a lot of associated events with that. But one of the things that came up last year, really as a kind of a surprise, was we launched a campaign, an advertising campaign with Duralast, which is our private label brand, which most folks know is our sort of battery brand, but there's tools and other products. And our spokesperson was MMA world champion Chuck Liddell. So I don't know if anyone's into mixed martial arts, but if you are, you love Chuck Liddell. And in the ad, this is pretty new for AutoZone, but in the ad, Chuck, who's like, big strong guy, is like hurling spaceships back into space and rhinos across the mountain and this and that. But what you remember most about this 30-second spot is that Chuck makes this getaway after this big dramatic thing, slamming his barefoot with blue toenails on the gas and racing away. And the blue toenails created such a stir on social media. And what was interesting is just how, no one remembers much. They're like, what ad? But those blue toenails. So in short order, we worked with, and then shortly thereafter, Chuck posted a video of his daughter painting his toenails blue on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. And so we quickly moved to create a campaign called #ToughestToenails and challenged our audience, our fans, to post pictures of their blue toenails. And we would make a $1 donation for each photo that was posted. And it was, it made a $10,000 contribution at the end of it. The point I'm trying to make is just being nimble, looking for those opportunities, because, it was a hugely successful, break into new audiences for St. Jude, engage our customers, and with a sense of humor. And really, and it probably helped even drive more interest in the campaign itself. And I don't have the metrics in my pocket right now, but anyway, I think it's, sort of looking for those opportunities. And before and since then, we've also been able to leverage relationships with our vendors. And all of your companies spend money with lots of different people, and they're paying attention to what you're doing. You're a customer. And so, I don't want to hog the mic here, but my point is that look for those opportunities, because they can sometimes be your best allies and really drive and strengthen those efforts that you have and those goals you have in your respective communities.
And to your point, it doesn't have to be your money. By tying in your customers, I had a friend that we do beneficial watch parties, so you come over to our house and watching the game and whatever you normally spend on lunch or dinner, we provide the food already. We have you donate that money, and so it goes to a nonprofit. I had a friend of mine that he said, hey, I'm going to do this over NFL season and see how much money I raise. He raised $15,000 just by having people over to his house. He was shocked. And so to me, that's a great example where you can do a lot by just engaging your vendors, engaging your customers in a meaningful way. So who has some questions? I think this is the fun part. We've got about 15 minutes left. Who has some questions? Let's see, one right over there.
No, go ahead.
Whoever wants to start.
Okay. Cynthia Allen with Baptist. Thanks, Kim. I had a quick question for you guys, because we've actually been, as Jenny probably knows, for years, and Jeremy, have actually been, of course, more focused and strategic in our giving too over the past maybe 10 years or so now. But we still face those challenges, and we're also not-for-profit, so we don't have the budget that a FedEx or Pepsi has or AutoZone. But we still face those challenges where some organizations, they understand that you're focused and strategic and where you want to give it what makes more sense, that for us it needs to have a health need component attached to it. But there's still those political things that come into play. And I was just out of curiosity wondering how you guys deal with it, like when people try to use competitors, a relationship or something like that, to try and influence your decision on giving. Because that does tend to always kind of be a challenge when you end up having to make donations outside the box. I don't know if you experience it much with UPS versus FedEx or Pepsi versus Cola or what have you. But if you can speak to that, each of you.
It's safe to say that all of us do
I would
that.
think so. I don't know how the big guys do it.
I can start that. On my team, I have a government affairs senior director, and he basically tells me the information I need to know in the watch outs. But as an organization, when it comes to the political world, is we do donations to both sides. And when it comes to community nonprofits, and this is my strategy, is when somebody says, well, if I don't give to them, yeah, I'm gonna go with Coke, and I'll just say, well, here's their number, call them. You know, that's not the way to do business. And I think, 20 years ago, that was the norm. You try to outbid each other, but in today's world, it's about, serving the community and how we can help fund you. And again, that's when I rely on, because we are so big, I rely on our local team. And, Jeremy, when we started this process, many years ago, a general manager in this area, his business on the Pepsi side may be $1 billion a year, and we hold him accountable to the profit and how he or she's doing. So every year they would focus on their numbers, even though they knew that community was a big part of it. But until it came into their compensation, it didn't help. Well, once we put it into the people's side, that's when they started to work more with the local nonprofit organizations. And we saw, we were a little worried that, well, you put that into their compensation, how are they going to react? Because it's almost 50% of their compensation. But the interesting thing about it is that a lot of these general managers saw that their numbers were not what, we expected, so they would double up on community. So it kind of worked out. In other words, you better be at the top on one or the other, both fantastic, but if you miss your number, don't miss your number on community. But for us, it's getting you involved with the local team, because we can't handle that at headquarters. It's just too big. So, coming to events like this, introducing you to our region, vice president, our directors, and then you take it from there. That's how it works best for us.
It's definitely an issue that we face as well, and we do have such a huge base of executives all around the world who have relationships and who want to, and organizations are smart, and they go to those people to ask for the funds. Tracy Stubblefield, who's here from FedEx, she's actually been leading this program to look at our investments and make them more strategic. And to do that, we've been engaging those executives and determining what those areas are. And we have been on a roadshow with them nonstop lately. It feels like saying, here's what we want to do, getting them on board so that they understand and they can speak to it when they get those requests. But there are still those relationship-based donations that have to be made. And for a while we talked about those as being not strategic, but really we kind of had to shift our thinking. And they can be strategic because that relationship can lead to something else. One thing we did, though, a while back was we gave each senior executive who heads one of our operating divisions an allowance, so to speak, of here's a set amount of money that you can have that you just tell us, we cut the check, unless it's something just horrid, but they never are going to propose that. But no questions asked, it doesn't have to go through our vetting and our review and all of that. And they have those allocations, and that's helped with when they send those things that don't make sense. We'll say, this can come from your allocation, and they'll say, yes, do it. So that's helped with that a little bit. The competitive part, like Richard said, that doesn't really fly with us. We just say, call UPS. There are things that, though, we collaborate with them on. If it's a natural disaster where people's lives are impacted, we're going to work together. We're going to collaborate. We're not going to compete over who's going to be the first in, who's going to do the most. We work with them on those. But then there's other things that we'll do. We'll have a big volunteer event in Atlanta where their headquarters are, and we're going to do a little bit extra media push just to, and that rallies our employees. It gets them excited, and it, makes them even more involved because they like to kind of be out there and stick it to the competition a little. So it's, it goes both ways, I guess, when it comes to the competition.
Questions? I think all I was going to say is that every company has those, sort of feels that pressure of the things that you have to do that kind of falls outside the parameters. And, to their point, it's that's why having a focus, that's why having, sort of and priorities identified and then well communicated, particularly among those who assert that kind of pressure or have those expectations, really understand the direction that you're trying to go, and that, the more resources you can put into one area, the better and greater results you'll have.
And you can also deflect. I think that's something we found pretty successful is, when you're just sitting down, most of them come in wanting money right off the bat. You say, look, we can't necessarily do this, but we can do some other things. Maybe it's including it in a newsletter, maybe it's pushing out to employees and finding volunteers. So, 9 times out of 10, if you offer, hey, what about this other option, and be a little bit creative, it tends to balance out pretty well too.
We should do all of it, everything you guys just said. So I think what makes me think maybe Grantmakers Forum may be a good idea to kind of push this, that there almost needs to be some kind of ethical standard, even among organizations, to know that it's just not wise to do that with community partners, you know what I mean? Because it is so important to have those relationships and what have you, and they just kind of need to understand that we want to be supportive, but if these are the things we're focusing on, what we can do with a limited budget, then, let's work together, towards it together.
And that's where there's always natural tension. I mean, we're all.
I want to say one more thing on that, because again,
Thank you.
you have to also understand when we're talking about community giving, we're talking about 2 buckets. One bucket is foundation dollars, and the other bucket is the operating dollars, and they're 2 separate. Everyone has the freedom to write a proposal and send it to any foundation in this country. But to tap into the operating budget, it's built on relationships. And again, some of the things that we do, we give the general managers and their teams the freedom to do what they want to do in this area. And I'm sure, you've probably seen a lot of these programs, and when they know who you are and what you're doing, and they're supporting you, we do. These are not foundation promotions; these are actual operating promotions. We'll align with a local retailer. Walmart does to do this, and we'll tell Walmart, give us a certain display, and we're going to take a portion of our profits and, give it to community. And the local retailers love that because, again, they're selling product, they're making money, I'm making money, and she's getting money. So it's really again, when you're working with the foundation, it has to fit their missions and their goals. But when you're working with the local community, they can do whatever they want. And if they want to tie you into a Walmart and their promotion, they can do it. Whoever the local retailers are. And for us, that's really the best way for us to serve the local community.
You guys, a question? Kim, do you have a question?
Well, I did, but I don't think we have time to answer it. But so when you talk about, and Jenny and I have talked about this before, about consolidating and being strategic in your giving, the one thing that I worry about and am concerned about, and we get the same pressures from customers and potential customers, and you have all the executives, but then there's also that need to breed the next generation of outstanding organizations in the community. And they're not going to be the ones that are going to come in and expect, or you're going to consider giving a bigger gift to. And so we spent a lot of time and energy giving away $5,000 grants, and we for our anniversary, and we thought that was an important amount of money to a lot of the smaller nonprofits. And then, all right, how many of you are from First Tennessee in the room? So we've got a lot of people here, and I know that more than half of the millennials consider community involvement when they make a job decision. So you think about all that diversity that Richard talked about, and the breeding and the consolidation, but the new nonprofits. And I wonder how y'all think about, now I think Richard's kind of addressed that, but Jenny, how y'all think about the smaller gifts and the diversity of appeal that you can make to your people who don't all have the same interests and desires, from a volunteer perspective and a giving perspective, just how y'all think about that.
We have some community relations boards in a lot of cities, and they have a certain amount of funds allocated to them, and it's employee driven, and so it's employees who are involved, who are interested in this, and they can volunteer to be engaged on these boards, and they'll meet, I think they meet about every other month or so.
Okay, yeah.
And that doesn't have to fit our giving areas. It can be what's important in that community to those employees, and they're small donations, but they mean a lot to those groups, and it is employee driven. That's what they do.
Over the last couple years, we've actually reworked our grant application, and so we really dive into the sort of short-term goals, the sort of long-term vision for organizations. We want to understand why they've put that particular project or that part of their business in front of AutoZone. And then we've also sort of put it in the framework of like, what's their operating budget? Like, what are they working with? You know, if they're asking for $60,000, but their operating budget's 65, that's not why we are not a lifeline. So, you know, those are all sort of considerations. We still, I mean, and I think we probably all still have the, you know, $3,500 and $5,000 gifts, and I don't think any of those are going away. I mean, I think that they're just it's a reality. I think it's that, but why are we doing them? I mean, we ask ourselves a lot, like, why? And if the reason is, you know, I mean, if it's something as like, you know, so-and-so wants it or whatever, I mean, you know, we have to sort of think about our work in the context of, you know, a really large ecosystem. And again, it's about alignment, but we also want to make sure that it's consistent. I mean, put it this way, we won't, well, I shouldn't say never at all, but it's unlikely we would support, you know, an animal shelter, okay? That's just something, it just is, and you know, and there's some things, and I pick on, you know, some of these things occasionally just for the sake of conversation, but, you know, there's some area, we just have to create a tie. And we, you know, there's some areas where people will say, hey, you know, why are you supporting this? But we really just, I mean, we've worked really hard and to identify, like, why. I mean, we've got to have, like, sort of the backup. And you know, when you have an organization, I think we all kind of are juggling this sort of intergenerational, like, sort of makeup, because we can look at the trends on millennials all day long. But, you know, at the end of the day, if our workforce is still, like, you know, majority or even overwhelming majority over 35, that's I mean, different. You know, those, we've got to keep that in perspective too.
Do y'all do matching gifts and leadership grants programs? Because that's one thing that we're able to point to is if you take a leadership role, Dave's on the Boys and Girls Club board, he can get money directly, he can get a match for his personal gifts, and I think that helps too. Yeah, and we have a long-standing matching gift program that's available to every AutoZoner the day they start at AutoZone. And then it goes up, you know, it's significantly higher for officers. So, and that's something, I mean, we do, you know, that's, you know, make sure that they know and they take advantage of. Put your money where your mouth is, big gal, right?
Right.
You know, I forgot to mention something. We were talking about how I believe that diversity and community go together. And in our organization, and most Fortune 100 companies have, is we have employee resource groups, called ERGs. You know, we have a Latino group, Asian group, African American, a women's group. I think we have 30. I'm not even sure how many we have. But we also give them a budget, and we lean on them to tell us where we should be investing a lot of our resources. And again, part of our strategies, we have 5 national players that we will work with because they're national. And many times it's kind of difficult, especially for these smaller nonprofits, because corporate America will look at the trends, and everybody is investing in this organization across the country. And if you don't, you're gonna look kind of bad. But sometimes you got to make those, and we've done it this year. You know, I've done it. I've made some bold decisions that I'm not going to go with that national nonprofit, even though, you know, people are going to ask some questions. But I'm going to take that, you know, whatever that huge amount was, and I'm going to invest it back into the local community. Because what happens, and again, not to disrespect anyone, but a lot of these trends. These big organizations will deplete all the resources that'll never get to, you know, her organization or the smaller ones. And sometimes you got to take a step back. You know, even though it's cool to invest in that organization, is that the right thing to do when it's not, you know, it doesn't trickle back down to the community. So we want to have the national partner, but we also want to have the regional partners. And the regional partners goes back to our general managers and our employee resource groups. You know, and you can, you know, you kind of can sense which ones are the, you know, we're always going to do the Red Cross, you know, because of the, you know, but what we do is we give them, you know, money directly. And, you know, we'll never change that because they do such good, you know, talking about lives and they're the best at it. But we're also finding now some smaller nonprofits to do the same work that can get it quicker than So we have to make those decisions, hey, let's take a portion of that, because again, it really is, the big ones deplete all the, I go to this will give you a good example. I go to a church, and we have about 10,000 members, and my church is a pretty small community, but all the other little churches are mad at my church. And, one time we brought in all the ministers and say, why are you mad? And this is where I got this guy, because you deplete all the resources. You get all the, and, it was kind of different coming from, a bunch of ministers, but, I'm a great listener. I tell people, I'll make $1 million off your idea, and you'll never even know it, And I got it. I said, wait a minute, we deplete. And I thought, community. It just opened a, a whole new way of looking for myself. But that's the strategy we use. We're always going to have the big ones because it's safe and they do good work. But we got to invest more into the local community.
Last thought from you, Jenny, and then we'll go.
No, I just want to thank everybody, and this has been fun to talk about and partner with my partner in crime, Jenny, and meet you, Richard, so thank you.
So big hand for our Jenny, Richard, and Jenny.